Good afternoon. Today I'm going to share with you an overview of what I think about thoughts. So this is a lot of this information is going to be based on some research that I did as I was putting this together, and also my experience and training in my work. So I'm going to share some stories and give you some suggestions at the end. If you have any questions, feel free to email or post them, in on the Facebook page here, and I will respond later on in this live. So I'm Sana Carpellotti, lifechangingenergytherapies.com, and I facilitate change in people's lives using energy psychology approaches. So I am like this close to setting the retreat dates for this fall in October or November. So I am like really thrilled about that, and we'll be sharing that information with you as possible. So this is about thinking. Um, so we all think, and we will never be able to stop thinking. We hear and read about the power of our thoughts, and yet when we tune in or we hear what we think, what consciousness streams in our brain and the mind, I mean, it might be concerning. I mean, some thoughts we would never share out loud. I've often had this crazy fantasy of like, what if we were all walking around the grocery store with those bubbles, on the side of our heads where, we would hear what other people are thinking. At times, we can feel desperately out of control, not only about the intensity and the speed at which the mind thinks, but also the thoughts can be overwhelming, especially when we're going through some kind of change in our lives, or we had a very difficult, challenging experience. So we also worry, and we also worry about the content of the thoughts that we have, and wondering, what the heck? I mean, I don't want to feel that hateful. I'm not hateful. Why was I thinking that? And you feel guilt, frustration, you get angry with yourself, wondering, why it doesn't stop. We might even question our sanity. It can get that serious. So recently, I heard a contemporary say on a YouTube video that we have about 50,000 thoughts a day. So I was kind of wondering, what is this true, and how they arrived at this number? I mean, how do you literally count thoughts that we have? So I decided to do a little search on the internet and see what the research was behind that. And it seems that some scientist took someone else's work and then distorted it and used it to meet someone else's needs that they were. So it was this chain, and things got a little bit distorted. And somehow this number is commonly used right now. So the neuroscience discussing the thoughts and this whole concept was pretty fascinating, at times a lot for my brain, and also a bit boring, so I had some thoughts about it. So it's kind of the same thing. I'm sure many of you have seen those 21 days to change a habit. Several years ago, when I was studying habit change for my work, this guy, Charles Duhigg, who is the king of habit research, and he said that he scoured the journals to find one study about this 21-day, this magical day when all of our habit would change after following certain steps, and there was none. So we all know, and we all have changed a habit in an instant where you say, okay, I am done with this. So how many thoughts do we have? Is it important that we have this number? I think it can be used as a wow factor or an attention grabber, but you can estimate that we probably have, anywhere from 40 to 80,000 thoughts a day, in terms of how we think. So let's take a look at um, let's take a look at what we know to be true about thoughts. I have to think that when somebody says we have 50,000 thoughts a day, that it's going to depend on the life that you lead. For example, if somebody has mental illness, like more of a psychosis or a schizophrenic state, they may tend to have more thoughts. If someone lives under chronic stress or is upset for a period of time, and it also can be determined by how calm you live your life. So a stressed lifestyle, stress or produce stressed thoughts that may race for periods of time all day long and also be very intense to the point of causing a headache. So I know that if I'm on vacation, I'm on the beach. Well, I'm not a beach goer, but my thoughts are going to be slower and maybe more floaty, because you're in an alpha or even theta brainwave state. So if I'm involved in a creative project and my mind is going to be quieter because I'm focused in on the task at hand. So here, some clients report being so stressed that they are constantly thinking, constantly demeaning themselves, having judgments or angry thoughts all the time. And I teach them in that moment how to interrupt that flow, because you really cannot control what thoughts appear, but you can take specific actions to help yourself and to turn off that transmission. So if your mind races a lot, you will have more thoughts. Okay, if your mind is quieter and calmer, you will have less and even slower thoughts. We all know that thoughts can appear random and pop up at bedtime, or when we feel overwhelmed and stressed. Um, Thoughts are also made up of and become actions. For example, if you put 2 teaspoons of sugar in your coffee, at some point that began as a thought and then became an automatic habit that is programmed into the subconscious mind. So the other piece is that thoughts are not only about what you hear. Okay, suppressed emotional thoughts, images that they are still activated. I always use this image. If I want to push something aside and I don't want to think about it, so the thought is still activated deeper in my subconscious, but it's almost like a creeping vine that goes up the arm and starts to asking for attention. So the brain circuitry is still active in the deeper mind. So you may notice that there's a sensory trace, such as a sound or a feeling or even a color reference. Here's an example. Okay, for example, let's say that your mother was a screamer. Okay, and you haven't thought about it in a while. On occasion it comes up with your siblings or, when she raises her voice now. But yet, okay, when you're in the company of a loud, boisterous woman, or your partner yells or your wife yells, you feel triggered and you become stressed, but you may not make the connection to the suppressed memory and the thoughts that you had related to your mother's anger back then. So suppressed feelings still have an activation. They are not neutralized, although they can be. Okay, some feelings have not ever even been articulated. but there's a felt sense or a neurological patterning in the body, and you feel them. For example, tension in certain parts of the body, or illness, or even a pain. Those things have a voice when we access them. So often, what I find is that the amount of pain that or the intensity of body pain that one has can be equal to the pain in the subconscious mind, because it's pretty clear right now how we think, the beliefs that we have, our lives are stored in the subconscious. And what happens is that the body is the mind, is the subconscious mind, and it's expressed there. So you have the burdens from your own life, what you think about those, what you never articulated, especially early trauma, and also if there is, inherited trauma that you carry too. So there's the psychological burden along with the meaning of the pain. So physical felt pain and suffering can be manifestations to which we haven't connected to from earlier times in our lives, because the body holds that tension. So this is what it means when we say pain is subjective. So might someone think about an experience that they had and focus on it? Like, for example, here in my work, they will tell me, well, when I think about my mom's screaming behavior and attention, I feel it here because I couldn't breathe, not realizing that becomes activated in other moments of their lives. So we might use substances or other activities to stop feeling those suppressed pains, especially as those suppressed thoughts, as they come up and percolate, bubbling up to consciousness. Because we, like for example, we don't want to feel guilt or anger after a tragic death. An example is a grandmother whose grandson died while in her care. Her guilt or believing that she was responsible for his death was suppressed, and she had turned to food, having gained 80 pounds within 2 years. So when we very gently brought that closer to her and allowed her to verbalize that, she was able to reduce the tension that she was not wanting to feel, to say some words in a gentle, supportive way that helped her to begin to take charge of this aspect of her life. So not thinking about something does not negate or neutralize it. It still lives in the subconscious, in your psyche. So the other thing that I think is always fascinating is that we misread our thoughts, and we behave in ways that are the result of inaccurate thoughts that we have. Thoughts are dependent on our moods and the feelings that you have here. And actually, that's where it begins, is the feeling in the body. You might discover that a gesture from somebody triggered a mood in you that started a rant of thinking and about something we saw, or we believed that we saw that wasn't even correct. So we can easily misinterpret and distort what we experience in our minds, and also others do it to us. And we have conflict at times when we don't even realize what's happening in someone else's mind. But the interesting thing is, and studies have shown, that our stories and our memories distort over time, somewhere in that range of about 50%. It depends on some values that you've given it, the emotional connection or the meaning that you associate it as well. And over time, our perceptions change. So we embellish, and we don't do it Well, some people do for needed attention or something, but I mean, we don't do it consciously or maliciously, but we add to a story or an event for many reasons. So we think these thoughts and we believe that life sucks or an individual was so awful. And it's possible that it's not even correct, and quite possibly that it never, ever even happened that way. I'm going to share with you a story that of a client that I saw many years ago. And this really tuned me into this whole idea of not having the bigger picture and also misinterpreting things. So a client called, I'm going to grab a sip. So a client called because she was having pelvic pain, constipation, and stomach distension. And well, I mean, obviously that's a medical condition, but she had seen about 6 or 7 doctors, healthcare practitioners, tried cleanses, did all of this stuff. And so I thought, okay, there may be a psychological component here. And I told her, I said, I don't do physical body work, but from my perspective, you can't separate mind and body. It's a system, a network. So as we talked, okay, this woman literally hated her mother her entire life. Okay, so she reported that she had 3 abortions and 2 miscarriages. Okay, her relationship with her mother was always distressed and very superficial because she told this story to herself and others. And this is something that her mom had said to her many times. I was devastated and shattered when I discovered I was pregnant with you. So imagine for the moment hearing that as a little child. And also, the story gets repeated many times over and over. And sometimes we have these gestures and these eyes that we look at each other with. So maybe her mom, had this sad look on her face. And every time her mom had a sad look, that was that feeling of rejection or alienation with separation, got triggered in her. So there was a wedge in the mother-daughter relationship. So let's just jump forward because it was about a 2 to 3 hour session. Okay, mother was very close to a sister who had 2 babies who died from a genetic disorder. Okay, so when this mother, my client's mother, became pregnant, she hid the pregnancy with girdles until she could no longer contract that area or hide the pregnancy. So as we worked, there was just intense grief and sobbing here. And I said to her, because this relationship with her mom, and she painted this picture of a woman who didn't want her. So she was believing in this rejection for her entire life. And I looked at her and I said, this is not her name. I said, Diane, your mother never finished her sentence. I was shattered and devastated because how could I be happy carrying you when my beloved sister had 2 dead babies? She immediately collapsed into a deeper subconscious realization and healing of what was happening here. And over time, with some other support that we did, she was able to loosen the contraction that she had carried for her mom. So this story, it illustrates how we don't always have the right information or the full picture, yet we think we know what we don't know. So I want to show you this picture, and I don't think you're going to see it very clearly on here, and I will post it on a comment, a posting place down below. So there was a doctor, Imasaru Emoto. He primarily studied water consciousness. So he did an experiment, and this is going to show you the power of the thoughts that you have, because every thought, if it's repeated enough with enough emotional overlay, becomes a belief and also becomes an experience in the body that we can easily become attached to. So Dr. Emoto, he filled 2 jars with rice. Okay, on one jar he wrote, "I love you," and on the other jar he wrote, "I hate you." So every day, and he did this with grade school children, every day as the children walked past the jars, he told them, they were instructed to say, "I love you," or "I hate, I love you," to the jar that said, read "I love you" label on it. And then also, "I hate you" to the other jar. So after a month, the loved rice was the same, but the hated rice had grown moldy and rotten. And here's a picture. I don't think you can tell because it didn't come out right, but I will post this on a post because it's better online anyway. And plus, I couldn't get it larger. I'm half tempted to try this on my own. So if I need to involve any of you, I'll let you know. So here's some thoughts that I want to leave you with today. Okay, do not believe all of what you think. Okay, the mind is a trickster and tells lies. Okay, so some of the thoughts that you have belong to your ancestors, your culture, your church, your past experiences, your parents. So just as love and care is projected in the thoughts that we create within ourselves, so is negativity. So listen to what you hear. Okay, like almost engage it like an observer. What do you hear in your family? What do others say to you, or what feedback? When you repeat a thought enough, it becomes a belief. So as an adult, okay, you can intentionally change how you think and the thoughts that you have, the words you speak to yourself and also to others. Now, we know this, but you can become introspective to these thoughts to discover, okay, and also to set boundaries with what you allow to come into your mind. And also to realize that your words have power and affect your cells. Okay, every illness and every condition has a voice, because sometimes I will work with clients who have, for example, high blood pressure, and we can actually engage a dialogue with the high blood pressure to understand the value and why it's present in their lives and what they need to do. So with racing, preoccupied, negative thinking in minds, we miss the good in every day. There are small moments that are delightful, full of love and compassion, and things that happen that when we're stuck here in this web of lies, we don't have the room to let that stuff in. So a few months ago, I did a video on your good nightly blessings, and I can probably pull up the link and post it below. If you take a look at that, it helps you to begin to make some room, because the brain is negatively biased. So the more you intentionally shift your focus, engage your thought patterns, you can clear your mind. It's almost like having your own a whiteboard in your brain with crap that other people wrote on it, outdated beliefs that no